Off and on. So everything that we're going to go through here on the computer, I'll have the steps to link along, and I'd encourage you all to go on and follow these steps and to read more in depth about any of the links or explore around. So we're going to start with the facility map system that gives us this ability to request automated airspace authorizations through LAANC. So if you just go to the main FAA.gov, /UAS, the main UAS Integration Office website there, and here on the left-hand side, you'll see certificated remote pilots, including commercial operators. Let's see. Yep, if I go that way. So if you click on that, right, we're going to get to this screen. Let's see, don't know which direction to go. There we go. Going to get to this screen here, and then again on the left-hand side, you'll see UAS facility maps. Oh, cool. You'll see UAS facility maps there. So if you click on that, it'll take you to this screen here, and basically what was done is they looked at the airspace in the public airports, controlled airspace, airports with an air traffic control tower, and surface area Class E airports. And they looked at those. They had their GIS office analyze the airspace, kind of worked with the airports, and developed. All right, so you can read a little bit about it there. But then if you click on this, view all UAS facility maps and grids, right, it'll take you to this big chart of the United States, and you can see reds and greens, right? So of course, greens are areas where LAANC is approved for use. Red is areas where it is not for some reason. And then again, so we were talking about airspace where you can't fly, so you can see some of that highlighted as well. We're going to try to stick to airport airspace for right now, but for instance, you can see Fort Campbell over there. You can see some other, airspace, for special security instructions and that sort of thing that we can't fly in. But when it comes to airports, we're going to use Nashville for our example today. So if you scroll in, this gives us a nice chance to see two different types of controlled airspace. So Nashville is Class Charlie, right? And Smyrna down here is Class Delta. Now the reason that Smyrna is in red, thank you, is in red there, is they have a contract air traffic control tower. So they have air traffic controllers. It's Class Delta airspace, as long as the tower is open. But the folks that you're talking to on the radio there don't work for the FAA. They work for a company that's got a contract with the FAA. And so that makes their airspace just a little bit different. So if you wanted to fly in the vicinity of Smyrna, even in these various grids that say 200, 400, see some 400s over there if you're following my mouse on the screen. There's some more 400s. If you wanted to fly in those, you'd still have to file an FAA airspace authorization through the drone zone, the same traditional way that we had to before LAANC ever existed. And we have one of those for that reason. Also, if you wanted to fly in any of the squares that say 0, or if you wanted to fly higher than any of the altitude blocks listed. So of course surface to 400 is where we're at anyway, but if you wanted to fly in these 200 and you wanted to go up to 300 to 400, you'd have to do an airspace authorization through the drone zone. And that applies for flying higher than is in the grid squares of this green airspace as well, or any of the zeros, right? But Smyrna is not part of LAANC yet. Hopefully they will be soon. It's not the airport's choice, it's the FAA's. Smyrna's real good to us, but this rollout is still continuing to roll out. It's been a couple of years now, and they're still rolling out additional additional airspace, both FAA and contract tower airspace. So we wouldn't be able to use the automated process for Smyrna, but we're going to come up to Nashville here and go through and look at this facility map and go through the process to get an airspace authorization through LAANC to fly in one of these grids. So you can see these zeros, right? If we zoom in real far, the zeros are the actual airport. If you can see there through the various layers, right? That's the runways there, you know, taxiways, the airport itself. So those are zeros. But on these facility map grids, again, this is an FAA website. This isn't where we're going to request the authorization, but we can see, you know, for example, here's a bridge over the Cumberland River at I-24 there. So if we wanted to fly up and down this section of the Cumberland River for shooting a boat commercial for Sea Ray or somebody, right? You can see there's 300 feet, there's 200, 100, 50, you know, so that would probably serve our needs, but you have to be careful, you know, not to get into one of the zeros. So when you're trying to determine whether or not you'll accept a job, right, looking at these facility map grids, and basically what they're looking at in this, to keep it simple, is looking at proximity to the airport and what other obstacles are in this airspace. So you can imagine in downtown, you got a few buildings that are more than 2 or 3 stories, right? Some of the high-rise buildings. So if they'd allow a UAS to fly from the surface up to, for instance, you know, right here where the mouse is, 200 feet AGL, there's probably something around 200 feet already in that grid, in that area, where if a UAS were flying in there, you know, that would not present any additional hazard, any additional level of risk, because if the UAS were the problem, the aircraft would have already hit a building or a tree or you know, a major power facility or whatever's there. And so that's kind of how they're looking at it. Distance from the airport, because of course we saw right over top the airport is zeros, and what else is in that airspace, you know. So, and as you get farther away from the airport, in most cases, your allowable altitudes will go up. And so if we wanted to fly from the surface up to 200 feet here in this grid square where the mouse is, we'd be able to do that automated. If we wanted to go any higher than 200, it's an airspace authorization, the same old way that takes, you know, 3 months or 2 or 3 months or so to obtain one of those. Okay, so these are called UAS facility maps. Okay, FAA website, FAA UAS website, commercial operators, facility maps, view all UAS facility maps and grids, and you can click around and look around, right? You can look all over the United States. You'll see some airports in green, some airports in red, right? The airports in red do still have squares. Your cause will be helped if you're looking for an airspace authorization and you keep it below the altitude in these grid squares. But again, you still have to do it the slow way, okay? Any questions about that so far before we move on from there? Okay, we'll continue on again. If you're back on the main FAA UAS Integration Office website, okay, if you click on Programs, Partnerships, and Opportunities, then come down here to FAA UAS Data Exchange. Okay, you get this screen here of talking about LAANC, the low altitude authorization and notification capability, kind of what it provides, how it works, and we're going to go through that today. When you can use it. Okay. You can use it under Part 107 or recreational rules. Right, we're going to go through. We're going to use it under Part 107 today. But you can see to qualify as a recreational flyer, you have to be registered and comply with the same steps. Okay, and there's a number of LAANC UAS service suppliers is what they're called. These are commercial companies, you know, that have a contract with the FAA. To my knowledge, the FAA does not pay them anything to host the LAANC service. It's a free service, right? So on any of these service suppliers, you can get a free account. Oftentimes they're a UAS service company, you know, that's out there and does a whole lot of other functions. But one of those functions that they do is LAANC, and that is free for us. So we're going to use AirMap today. Okay. You can see AirMap, one of among many choices, and then you can see if they provide near or real-time authorization, further coordination, and if they have the exception for recreational flying. Okay. So if we go to airmap.com, okay, click on Plan a Flight. Okay, we're going to get a chart here that looks just like the facility map grids. Forgive the slightly slow internet. Let me zoom back in here. Okay, that resemble the facility map grids. Y'all remember how Smyrna was red on the facility map grids and Nashville was green? Okay, so different colors, but you can see they again still differentiate. And if you zoom into Smyrna, okay, you're still going to get those altitudes, but see how it's red, right? So that's not the red line above the number there, right? So that's not available for LAANC, okay? So we're going to go in here. Here's Nashville, same altitude blocks, same lateral geographic grids, same maximum altitudes, right? These are pulled straight from the UAS facility maps over on the FAA website. Okay, and so we're going to go through planning a flight. Okay, so for preparation for this, right, I've just put in my aircraft. I'm picking on the same Phantom 4 Pro here as we have been working with. Labeling, manufacturer, model, and then you just have to give it a nickname. I use the aircraft's registration number for its quote unquote nickname, but you don't have to necessarily give them your registration number. You just have to certify that it is registered. That's just how I've named that particular aircraft. Okay, and then in my profile, okay, I have had to put in my phone number. Okay, because that it'll give you notifications, kind of like DJI gave us notifications when we were going through FlySafe. Okay, so we'll add a flight here, and this is on an app as well. So we're doing it here on the computer to try to help it be a better presentation, and hopefully it'll come through for y'all clearly. But there are apps as well that are free. Okay, so. You have the choice of doing a center point with a radius, right? Y'all have worked with that, like when we've been filing NOTAMs, for example. You can map out the specific route of flight. You can make polygons, upload from a cloud. So we'll just we'll kind of set a short flight here, thinking about the altitudes, right? So now we've gone into a 50 block. Can y'all see that down here? Y'all see how we've gone into a block where the maximum allowable altitude is 50. If we didn't go in that block, we'd be able to go up to 100. If we didn't go in the 100 block, we'd be able to go up to 200. Y'all see how that works? You have to take the lowest altitude. If we didn't go into the 200 block, we could go up to 300, okay? Okay. So you click around, just kind of draw your area. There's the area that I've drawn. Okay. Come over here in the lower right corner. Thanks. Come over here in the lower right corner, and we're going to start to set a few things. But before we do, we see this big red triangle, big triangle with the exclamation point. Okay. So you can see there's some controlled airspace. 200, 100, 50, and 300, right? So those are the cautions about the maximum allowable altitudes in those blocks. Remember, we saw the 300 block there on the left, the most westerly, 50, the most easterly, 100 and 200 there in the middle, okay? And then flight, start and end options for you. You can definitely just program your own. Okay, so for altitude, y'all remember that our lowest our lowest permissible altitude in that block in this flight area is 50 feet for the automated service, right? So we'll have to select that lowest altitude 50. It'll allow you to select higher, right? But then that's going to require an airspace authorization. And the LAANC service can help you request an airspace authorization, but if I were y'all and you're going after an airspace authorization, I'd just do it through the drone zone, you know, and use these for guidance of altitudes and locations. So altitude 50, date and time you can select now. Y'all see how it said today, now, all right? Or you can select the time in the future. So once you select the date, you can select the time. So if we were going to do it at 2:30 this afternoon, oops, today, 2:30, hit OK. Okay. How long will we be out there? Well, if we're filming around, maybe 3 hours. This is one where I'd recommend you put in a duration on the safe side, on the longer side, because once you're finished, you can just go ahead and delete the flight or say that the flight's on the ground and incomplete. Okay. Pilot and aircraft. Okay, we'll select our aircraft. Flight context, is it occurring within visual line of sight? Yes. Will it occur over people? No. And all these little eye dots, you know, you can click on those and get additional guidance. What's the weight of the drone? It's a Phantom, so it's about a little over 4 pounds. So we'll put 4.5. First name and last name of the pilot and a verification phone number, okay? So we'll click Brief Flight Plan. It'll come up with our weather, a little bit before and during our proposed flight time with the winds, visibility, right, temperature, dew point, pressure. And that'll help give us an idea if it's within the aircraft and our personal limits to be able to fly. Authorization requests, we'll have to get one from B&A, right, Nashville International. And it's saying that, you know, it's yellow because there's rules that could use review, okay? So we'll submit our flight plan. Flight plan has been submitted to AirMap and is pending authorization from B&A, okay? Oh, that's convenient. So it'll text message you, and usually the text message comes that fast that it's approved. FAA controlled airspace authorization is not available at this time. Please try again soon. Of course. I did it without exaggeration. I did this, you know, an hour before this presentation, and it works just fine. So we'll pretend that it came through and was approved, and we will use our previous flight. So see where it says pending here? Okay. So we'll pretend that it was approved and just look at this one. Okay. Okay, so this one's very similar. They're very, very similar locations and such, but there is the flight plan. Okay, that's the time remaining. There was the same, you know, weather conditions. You can see remember when that was yellow for the previous example? So it turned green, authorization approved, and we get a confirmation number. And then we have this file you can download. Whoops, we have this file you can download, and we'll look at that here in just a moment, okay? So that's the flight plan, or that's the flight brief, rather. Okay. Flight plan details, we can duplicate it, and then if we were to land early, how I was talking about going a little bit longer than you might need. So if you expect it to be a 2-hour job, put in at least 3 hours or so, and when you're done, you can just say to delete the flight. So let's look then at, and you can see, you know, current, future, and past flights. So it keeps a record so that you can easily duplicate, you know, here within the AirMap system. And the other, you know, 15 service suppliers that provide LAANC service are going to have a very, very similar interface using the UAS facility map grid altitudes, being able to allow you to plan a, you know, center point and radius flight or a, you know, flight pattern. Okay. Okay, so here's the AirMap notice of authorization. Okay, you can see it was issued to me, start time and end time for the flight. So this would be the authorization if any public safety official were to come up and want to see, authorization to fly. If you needed to submit anything to DJI, this is your airspace authorization, as though you got the full airspace authorization from the FAA. Okay. You can see some operating rules that are just a review again of the regulatory requirements for flying that y'all are familiar with. Altitudes, airspeeds, time of day. Okay. Talks about who to contact, who's the responsible person, if you will. Remember when y'all were when, I guess it was a different class that's doing the night waiver, but y'all have a responsible person. Might not necessarily be the PIC, but there'll be a responsible person associated with the airspace authorization.
So a question for Mark.
Oh, good.
So out of curiosity, could you use this to unlock the DJI?
So what? Funny timing. We're about to go in and show you how the DJI FlySafe map compares with the facility map grids, and if you were to need to unlock it. So if self-unlock were not a feature of the airspace you're proposing to fly in, this would be emailed to DJI through the custom unlock process within FlySafe. Absolutely, to be able to unlock your drone to fly in that airspace, because all of this that we've done so far is just for the FAA. So there's absolutely still an aircraft side, and so that's where this comes into play. So we were just right there looking at the authorization. I was just going to show you real quick. I know we're getting short on time, but this is just a VFR sectional of the area, right? So you can see how the Class Charlie airspace looks in terms of where we are proposing to fly. There's that bridge, right? So the Class Charlie airspace starts at 2400 MSL. Okay, that's just a Google Maps view. And so here we are back in DJI FlySafe. Okay, so in answer to Mark's question and to make it clear from what we were talking about last week, we've gone to DJI FlySafe. I've logged in. Okay, we selected our area, self-unlocking. Selected our aircraft, the Phantom 4 Pro. Okay, and come in here to Nashville. So we've got a bunch of different colors around Nashville. Can you all see that there? So we have the red, the blue, and the orange, the yellow. Okay, so the red is basically a 0 on the U.S. facility map. An airspace authorization from the FAA would be required, not even through LAANC. Okay. The blue is just like the blue down here at Murfreesboro. Remember how that was colored blue? So that can be a self-unlock. And then the orange is just an advisory. You'll get a little message up on the screen when you arm the aircraft. Heck of a time to be giving you any messages once you have the prop spinning, but it's when they do it. You tap a couple confirmation statements, hit OK, and you're good. So within the blue here, though, it's self-unlock. So Nashville International. Input the flight controller serial number for that aircraft that you're flying, available for 3 days. Submit, put in your phone number, get that confirmation text message, that sort of thing. Now, if you were flying in any of the red and you were authorized to fly in any of the red, remember that is through the custom unlocking process. And if we look at custom unlocking,
you are still on the air.
Okay. If we look at custom unlocking, the submit documentation, authorizing your application, that is that notice of authorization. This would be able to be used for this submitting documentation authorizing your application. Okay. You could submit this. Now, when we're going through LAANC here, one thing that we didn't look at, I can just make a real quick flight here. let's see, where are we? We're within 100-foot grid. Okay, we'll just do a center point, and we'll just do a center point radius. Okay, under date and time. Okay. Date and time is what I really wanted. So see, we can go into the future. Okay, we can go considerably into the future for these flights, and so if you were doing one where you needed a custom unlock, you'd want to be planning this a few days in advance. Okay. Right. And that authorization then that you get, the notice of authorization would be in the future. Date issued would be whenever it's issued, but start time, end time would be in the future, and that's what you can send to DJI FlySafe. Okay. Yeah, I'm sorry, that first one that we went through didn't go through, but you can see they ask a few legalese type questions. There we go. And then within settings, nope, I'm sorry, it wasn't there. I could have sworn it was there. Anyway, I know it's time. So within the air map system, within the LAANC system, you dictate whether or not you're flying as a recreational or Part 107. So it will know and it will be saved in your profile whether or not you're flying under commercial regulations or as a hobbyist. Okay. But that is how the facility maps and grids tie in to the LAANC system for automated airspace authorizations for the vast majority of airports and airspace around the country. So when we were doing some various capstone projects around downtown Nashville, you really don't want to be flying in these 0 squares anyway, unless you're in real close coordination with the airport. So usually these altitudes, will be able to, encompass your commercial operation. We were doing rooftop videos and that sort of thing, and those altitudes are still good for the operations that you'd be conducting in those areas. If not, then it's an airspace authorization through the FAA drone zone. And if it can be encompassed within these grids, good to go and go through the DJI FlySafe. If it needs a self unlock or a custom unlock, and again, that just has to do with your ability to arm the aircraft. And then it's on you and your responsibilities to fly within those altitude restrictions. So the DJI drone will not limit you to these altitudes. Y'all see these altitudes. The FAA, the Phantom 4, the aircraft. I'm most familiar with DJI equipment, but there are of course other, Unique and Autel and any of those, other aircraft. They will not limit you to these lower altitudes, 50 feet. That's your responsibility. Okay, I'm not saying go out and fly higher than them. I'm saying that's, you can set it as a ceiling within your pre-flight. But just because your authorization stops at 50 feet, your aircraft can continue to climb past that, right? And then that's going to be an airspace violation. So you want to be especially cautious of that. Okay, when we're flying in areas that aren't just surface to 400 feet and watch for manned aircraft, you want to be especially cautious for airspace violations. Flying in areas where you're flying higher than you're allowed to fly. But again, you can try these out. This is free, and you can go in once you're done trying them out. I'd recommend you go in and delete them. There's my past one. I can just delete the flight. Okay, that'll get rid of it, and it'll send me a text message that it's been deleted. Future flight, that one didn't ever go through, so we can delete that one. So they're not sitting out there in the system. But you can explore and be prepared for how to complete a LAANC application. Again, these are apps, these are websites. So if you're sitting in a business meeting talking about proposed operation, you'll know, right away, is it within a grid where we can fly up to 50, 100, 200, 300, 400 feet? Is it in a zero grid where it's going to take possibly months? So you've got the facility maps to look at, and the in those same grids within the LAANC system. Okay, so there's all the service suppliers again. A little bit of how it works. There's a lot of links in there. I know I've gone over on time, so I would recommend that y'all have a good thorough look through this, especially depending on where you're proposing to go out and operate UAS. If you're going to be within the Middle Tennessee region, if you're going to be nationwide, if you're bidding on projects, so be familiar with the airspace around where you're proposing to work, as well as any restricted airspace. So the other thing I wanted to show y'all just real quick. Okay. So within the Middle Tennessee region, I expect Huntsville would be encompassed within that, remembering airspace where you can't fly, special use airspace over Redstone Arsenal. Okay. Class D airspace, that's not encompassed within the LAANC system. Go over here to the facility maps. They seem to be doing a little better right now. Okay, you can see. Oops. Okay, you can see how the base there is encompassed. Again, this isn't access into restricted airspace or anything like that. This is just primarily airspace around airports that would otherwise be controlled airspace. So B, C, D, and the surface area of E. Because normally E around an airport starts at 700 feet above the ground. Normally E everywhere else starts at 1,200 feet above the ground. And so within our surface to 400 feet, we're usually fine. But please, by all means, if anybody has the few extra minutes here, does anybody have any questions? Would you like to see anything again? Any questions about the process or how to find the data before you apply for a LAANC waiver? Usually, and I'm sorry it didn't come through for some reason this time. I don't know why. Bad luck. Usually it comes through, within a matter of seconds, less than a minute or two, from clicking submit until getting the text message and the notification within the LAANC system that your airspace authorization is approved. It's all automated. There's nobody in Nashville International Air Traffic Control Tower looking at these and saying yes or no. There are for airspace authorizations and airspace waivers, but not for LAANC approvals. They're just automated and get a message right back that it's approved, and then when you email DJI, that comes back within 2 or 3 minutes as well. So make sure you factor these into your pre-flight times. Anybody still there?
Yeah, Mark said great things.
Okay.
So if anybody has if you want to tell them to.
Yeah, I guess type in your questions if y'all are still there.
So Mark has, do any DJI apps have LAANC?
Yeah, well, so they're supposed to. So how about that for an answer? There you go. So DJI is a LAANC service supplier. They call these UAS service suppliers. So there's old DJI right there. I have not been able to, well, and you can see it doesn't have any check marks there. So they are approved, but they do not currently offer the ability to do a LAANC request through their app, through any of their apps. DJI Pilot, Go, Go4, Ground Station Pro, Pilot. They've got a myriad of apps, but they don't offer it in any of them. You can see if they offer real-time authorization, that's that, lickety-split text message, quick approval. Further coordination would be if you wanted to fly higher than the grid square, still 400 feet or less, just higher than the grid square, or at a 0 grid square, which I guess is still higher than the grid square's altitude, that the app would help you try to coordinate that. Be honest with you, the FAA is going to require a whole lot more detail than any field in that app is going to usually allow you to input. It's going to require risk mitigations, airspace analysis, detailed description of your work, that sort of thing, for further coordination. And then if the app supports for flying recreationally. So you can see some do, but just don't support the recreational side. So air maps, Skyward are the biggies. DJI, I'm sure will eventually get on board. They're approved. I'm not sure why they're not on there yet. But there's quite a number of big names on there. Kitty Hawk. I'd start looking at those three: Air Map, Skyward, or Kitty Hawk.
And what you do, Doug, is tell them that give us a few minutes. If they have any questions, we can go to Zoom right after this.
Okay, absolutely, yeah. So if you guys have any questions that you want to ask, we'll be on here for a few minutes. 'Cause I know there's a little bit of a delay from me talking to getting on YouTube, and then y'all having a chance to type in your questions. We can also be on Zoom for a bit after the YouTube shuts down. We can go over to Zoom if you have any further questions on Zoom.
Okay, no new questions, so
Okay. Bye for now. See you. We'll go over to Zoom for a little while in case anybody